Donald Trump has indicated he may not remain in the White House after he was beaten by Joe Biden. So where does this leave the transition between the old and the new administrations? Well, let's head to Tampa in Florida, where we can talk to Amanda Makki, Republican lawyer and policy strategist. And from New York, we're joined by Tisch Sussman, Democratic strategist and former vice president of campaigns for the Center for American Progress. Great to see you both. Thanks very much for being with us. Amanda, let's turn to you first then. What did you make of the president's comments last night? He said, who knows which administration will be in the White House? Time will tell.
Well, I mean, we have lawsuits that are ongoing, and certainly there are multiple states where we have recounts. And so I think the president is acknowledging, look, we're doing everything that we can, and we're going to do everything to weed out any type of voter fraud, irregularities, equal protection issues, making sure that Republican viewers of the ballots have the same rights and the same treatment as the Democrats did. That's one of the allegations there in Pennsylvania. So I think he's just recognizing that, it's going to be either me or Joe Biden, but I'm going to fight this and I'm going to fight this through.
You don't think it was the sign that maybe he's seen the writing on the wall and it was the start of perhaps a path to conceding, because he didn't look like a president who was fighting all the way?
I mean, that's entirely possible, but he right now is fighting, and he's made that very known. They have the Million MAGA March today in Washington, and, he said he might be attending. So I think he's very much in full spirit of everything that he needs to do. 72 million Americans voted for President Trump, and he wants to make sure to, go through the process to ensure that no vote was stolen, no vote was illegal. And I think Joe Biden should want that too. That's good for democracy. And that's
5 million more
that we should.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. 5 million more, of course, voted for Joe Biden, although obviously the popular vote isn't so important. But as things stand, Biden on 306 votes in the Electoral College versus Donald Trump's 232. An exact flipping of the situation 4 years ago when Donald Trump called it a landslide.
But if you look at the margins by which these states are claiming that Joe Biden won, the margins are very thin. We're just talking 10,000 votes here. Michigan is the largest, but really tens of thousands of votes separate who could have won the Electoral College in those states. And so, the margins are still thin. I would just say, to my Democratic colleagues there, we are a center-right country. The socialism, the ideas that the Democrats have been perpetuating was soundly rejected, even with tens of millions being thrown in states like Florida and Texas. They were soundly rejected. They didn't flip a single House legislature. In fact, Republicans did in New Hampshire, both the House and Senate, and in Alaska, despite having much significant, smaller amounts of money pouring in than the Democrats did. Okay. So, go with caution on this. This is definitely more a center-right country. And don't discount Trump voters because you think that, Joe Biden got more voters. There are a lot of people that don't want to see these mask mandates go into place. And a lot of the ideas that Joe Biden and his team want to propose worry people.
All right. I want to bring in one of your Democrat colleagues then, Tisch Sussman. I'll get you to respond to some of those answers. But also, first of all, just give me your thoughts on President Trump's statement last night.
I'm very concerned. Look, I'm concerned that he is not acknowledging that it is time to start the transition. It is time to acknowledge that he has not won. He has brought but he has brought many of his supporters into Washington today to march. What are they marching for? Are they marching to try to keep him from leaving the White House? Like, the transition should have started already. I think that my colleague here has presented it in a much calmer tone, quite frankly, than the president does, and kind of normalized what he's doing, when in fact this is not normal. He lost in a landslide. It was the highest turnout in any election in American history. The voters decisively spoke. They spoke by the Electoral College. They spoke by popular vote to say they do not want him to be the president. And unfortunately, what's happening now is that he is perpetuating his undemocratic behavior. He is He is tossing aside evidence that his claims are baseless. He is amping up the temperature. What we heard over and over from Republican strategists, from advisors to the campaign before the election is whatever we want to happen, we just want the country to move forward calmly. That is the opposite of what President Trump is perpetuating, and it is time to move on. And the fact that so many Republicans are giving him the platform and the space to normalize what he is doing is everything about politics, and it is nothing about the democracy. The reason I say it's everything about politics is because control for the Senate, which will be able to determine whether or not Democrats have a full control over the federal government, is still going on. There is a runoff for both of those seats in Georgia. That will happen in the next couple of weeks. And so what happens is what's called a turnout election that goes to strategy, which means that you're not convincing new voters. You're just going back to your same voters and you're saying, hey, remember, turn out again, right? That's why we call it a turnout election. And so Republicans are very scared of alienating any of Trump's diehard supporters. It is very scary how we live in a totally bifurcated media society where there are now different realities. The realities for not all, but a lot of Trump voters is that he won. And by the way, that is perpetuated by the president himself when he uses the terms legal votes versus not legal votes. This is why law firm after law firm is failing to represent him. He lost another law firm yesterday in his legal battles because they know these things are not true and they are bad for democracy.
Just briefly, when we saw Donald Trump speaking last night, he was sort of sitting on the fence, really, wasn't he? Did you expect him to come out one side or the other, either fully fighting or conceding? In the end, it was sort of neither one nor the other.
I think it's the closest he knows to acknowledge defeat. I don't think he has that emotional vocabulary. So I think it's the closest he can possibly get, but it's not enough to move his supporters. They want to see him. I don't know what fighting looks like. I don't know if it's dragged out of the White House by the military. Like, I don't know how this ends, but the fact that they're playing to politics to try to turn out their voters in the Georgia election. And by the way, I'm not like whispering that. That's been spoken out loud by Democratic leaders. I think is very scary. I think they're playing politics with the strength of the democracy.
And Amanda, of course, the other issue here is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. The situation incredibly worrying and scary in America at the moment, and this is catastrophic for the transition period because it means that what needs to be done isn't getting done.
Well, let me just respond. I can't believe that Emily would say that people shouldn't be allowed to have their First Amendment right to be marching or be doing whatever they can. They were issued a permit by the National Park Service, and there is absolutely nothing wrong. It's really undemocratic to even say that people shouldn't be out expressing their freedom of speech.
Say that.
With regards to the pandemic, I would just say that, this president has done an incredible job. It's remarkable to see that in less than a year, we will have a therapeutic on the market. And that's just really, the CEO putting his skills to the test and helping to bring to market with Operation Warp Speed a vaccine. And that's incredible. That's remarkable. And he should be lauded for that. And lauded for the efforts of this administration. I would just say this. When we look back to the 2000 elections, there were 37 days. 37 days. It has been 9 days. So this impatience is it's really interesting that it only seems to affect the Republicans when, there's not enough time.
Amanda, people don't really genuinely think that Donald Trump is going to stay in the White House. Do you genuinely think he's going to stay in the White House for the next 4 years?
It doesn't matter what you or I think. It matters what claims the president has before the courts. No matter how big or how small, in the United States, you can bring your claims and your grievances before a court. And that's what the process is. We're in the canvassing
But the evidence
process.
is so weak, isn't it time that he just went gracefully?
I'm sorry?
I said the evidence is so weak, isn't it time he just went gracefully?
The time won't be until the states have certified, and that's not till December 14th.
OK, Emily, I'm just going to let you have a final word as well, just to come back on that.
I'm concerned about the state of the country, particularly in terms of how we are going to prepare for distribution of inevitable vaccination. That we are not prepared. The former chief of staff, John Kelly, to Donald Trump has said for us not to start the transition officially means that it is harming our national security. We cannot move forward. I would like President-elect Biden to be able to start on day one to get this vaccination distributed, of which we understand the federal government does not really have plans for at this point. And it concerns me that we are continuing to play politics with the reality that is just not happening. And we hear it even from President Trump's Secretary of State, Pompeo, saying they're planning for a second Trump administration. That concerns me that not living in reality is actually going to impact the lives of millions of Americans, all Americans, who cannot move forward. And we really can't move past any phase of pandemic if we can't actually get President-elect Biden's new team in there ready to go.
Okay, all right. It was an early start for both of you. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much. Amanda Makki, Republican lawyer and strategist. Emily Tisch Sussman, Democratic strategy. Thank you.